waiver-wire quarterbacks. Let's start off with the immortal Marcus Mariota. Still, biggest gap between real life and fantasy production for this guy. Keeps producing.
Yeah, he does. Tough matchup with my Commanders, obviously, but at least 17 fantasy points in 5 and 7. The rushing keeps his floor high. 40 rushing yards or a rushing touchdown in each of the last, in 5 of the last 7 games where he scored at least 17 fantasy points. Again, last week, QB 14. That's basically what he is. He's a mid-tier guy there. So some other quarterbacks here, because I know we're running short on time. We talked about Ryan Tannehill. He gets Cincinnati, right? Ryan Tannehill has had, in the 2 games since he's come back, 19 fantasy points as teams continue to stack the box against Derrick Henry. That opens up play action for Tannehill, who is accurate. And again, the emergence of Treylon Burks, Austin Hooper as well, nice pass-catching tight end. All of a sudden, the Titans' passing offense starting to, show some signs of life. I think they play in Cincinnati. They're going to have to throw to keep up with the Bengals.
Yeah, I think the emergence of Treylon Burks as well, because they didn't have NFL-level receivers for a stretch there. But now you've got Treylon Burks, Robert Woods. These are NFL receivers. The emergence of my man, Russell Westbrook-Ikine as well, that helps too. So I think Tannehill is certainly viable against the banged-up secondary. What do you think of Jacoby Brissett? And also, what do you think of DeSean Watson?
Yeah, what do I think about Deshaun Watson is a very loaded question. I will talk about what I think of Deshaun Watson purely from a fantasy football point of view. And from a purely fantasy football point of view, I think Deshaun Watson, if you are quarterback needy, is probably worth grabbing and stashing, right? He's expected to return in Week 13 against Houston, so this is the last week of Jacoby Brissett. If you need somebody this week, they play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. It's not a defense that really scares you so much. Last 3 games, he's averaged over 20 fantasy points per game. Jacoby Brissett, maybe a last hurrah for him because he knows Watson is coming. And I do think Watson, if you're looking for somebody to stash down the stretch, he becomes kind of interesting. He's available in over 52% of Yahoo leagues. It's a little nervous, right? Because Watson hasn't played in almost 2 years. But of the guys out there, if you're desperate for a quarterback for the rest of the way, he's somebody that is certainly interesting. And finally, Taylor Heinecke.
What a surprise.
My guy, Taylor Heinecke. Look, over the last...
coda.
Over the last 3 games, Taylor Heinecke is averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. He's had 2 different games with over 20 points. Look, he didn't have the great game against Houston because he didn't need to because they got the pick 6. But against Atlanta, he's had success against Atlanta in the past. So, yeah, Taylor Heinecke. He's a mid-tier QB2.
I like it, and you're not afraid of that matchup against Atlanta.
You certainly are not.
Yeah, it might be a little bit of a shootout. The suddenly relevant Washington Commanders, 6-5. Plus 150 to make the playoffs.
Plus 1. I'm taking that bet at BetMGM, especially when I use the promo code Barry because I'm a company man. Hey, it's Matthew Barry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.